Some mothers draw a tight circle, a possessive circle around their children for fear of losing their love. Not mine. She draws a bigger circle to include our spouses and friends. Believe. What was the golden thread that kept the fabric of her life from unraveling? She says it was the presence of God in my life. Enjoy. She lets a new idea, a chickadee at the feeder, a game of bridge with friends, or a grandchild's hug brighten her day. The watching blue eyes of my youngest child draw me. I pick her up and hold her close. The best part of having that printed in the magazine was in the little town where I grew up. Apparently they all read that magazine. And they stopped her on the street and called her on the phone to say they liked that description of her. And I thought, mission accomplished. Why wait till the funeral to honor the people that we love? My mother had a lifetime of interesting experiences. She lived for years with my father's alcoholism and then enjoyed a few short years of his sobriety until he died suddenly of a heart attack. And she became a widow with 4 children to raise, including my brother with autism. She taught school full-time and eventually became the joyful and devoted grandmother of 11 grandchildren. Little did I know back then that those beautiful, admirable strokes in my mom's life would someday be darkened by streaks of dementia. If you have watched a loved one as dementia or Alzheimer's progresses, you know that it is a long, slow goodbye. For me, it was goodbye to the level of support and encouragement that my mom had always been for me. When she was in her 80s, she began to lose her memory quite noticeably. And she said to me one day, she was still aware of the process. You know, life is twice as fun when you lose your memory. She said, I read a really good book, and then I can read it again. It's like new. And your sister calls me at noon to say she's coming at 5 to take me out for supper? That's a great surprise in the middle of the day. At 5 o'clock, it's a surprise again. Because Mom still lived alone at that time, my sister ordered her Meals on Wheels, which was a good idea, except sometimes the trays would be behind the chair or not touched. She still did a bit of her own cooking, and when we cleared out her house after she went into a nursing home, there were a lot of pots and pans with very black bottoms. My sister carefully arranged all her medicines in one of those time of day of the week holders, and came into the kitchen, saw Mom one day standing there with a big bowl, and she just dumped them all in there, and she was randomly stirring them. Well, one Wednesday morning, about 10:30, I remember it so clearly, it was out of my usual calling routine for Mom. I thought, I'm going to call Mom. I said, hi, Mom, what are you doing? Oh, dear, I'm just in the basement with this nice man that came to the door, and he wants to see if I have any antiques for sale. I was horrified. I didn't want to panic her, so I said, just call me when he leaves. I hung up the phone and quickly said a prayer for her safety and called the neighbor. I said, Glenn, go over there and stay with my mom. Some guy's there in the basement with her. So he went over, and eventually the dealer bought a little vase or something and left his calling card. My husband lost no time in calling that number, asking him some pointed questions like, did you get a permit from town hall to do what you were doing? Answer, no. How did you decide to knock on my mother-in-law's door? Oh, he said, when I drive into a new town, I just drive around till I see homes that might be seniors who might have antiques for sale, and if there are toys and kids in the front lawn, I don't stop there. Well, we didn't really like either one of these answers, and he offered to sell the vase back to her, and I preferred that he never darken the front of her door again. So the vase was not the issue, it was my mom's vulnerability, for sure. However, there was lots of fun during these days. My mother developed the habit of repeatedly asking a question until she got the answer that suited her. She was chatting with my 15-year-old son, and she said, Eric, how many girlfriends do you have? Well, none right now, Grandma. A minute later. Eric, how many girlfriends do you have? None, Grandma. I leaned in close to him and said, honey, just give her a number or she won't stop asking. So the next time he She asked him, he said, well, I have 10 girlfriends. And my mother, a former teacher, said, oh, that's good. You wouldn't want to go to school just for the academics. She spent her final days in a nursing home. One day my husband drove to visit her. She carried on what appeared to be a very polite, formal conversation, and it was clear she had no idea who he was. Finally, she said, well, it was nice of you to visit me today. Where do you live? I live in Guelph. Oh, my daughter lives in Guelph. It's Linda Neff. Do you know her? They said, well, yes, I do. She's my wife. Oh, I think that makes you my son-in-law. I guess I can stop being polite. Well, polite was what I tried to be when she called me from that nursing home one time at 3 a.m. It was about a 95-minute drive south of us. Hi, dear, just thought I'd give you a call. Not much going on here. Mom, not much going on because it's the middle of the night. No, really? Yeah, what's your roommate doing? Well, she's sleeping and her light's out. Sleeping, that's what I wanted to be doing. Mom, I was being the parent now. I think you should go back to bed and get some rest. It really is 3 o'clock in the morning. No, dear, it's not 3 in the morning. You and I live in different time zones. There was some truth to that. There are time zones and there are mind zones. My mother didn't live to experience the 24/7 communication, information overload that we have now. I think that she probably would have adapted well to it, but I find it sometimes intimidating. And I think when I get older, my mental function is going to be reduced to 4 words. Let me Google that. Sometimes I find that the information overload is like a tsunami. It just sweeps over the landscape of my mind. And I'm not always sure just how to handle it. And sometimes it's overwhelming. I have learned, however, that all that information can sometimes sweep away what's most important, the character and love of people in my life and my relationships. And it takes more than the click of a mouse to draw out those memories of other people. And I've spoken with many people who have memories of my mom. My daughter, Sarah, remembers that when she was little, my mom had this little routine. And she would stretch out her arms and she would look right at Sarah and say, Grandma loves you this much. And Sarah would put out her own little arms and push and stretch and say, I love you too, Grandma, this much. Always wishing that someday she would grow up enough to show that she loved Grandma more. Well, my mother passed away at age 94, and I thought, she may have lost her memory, but our memories of her are not lost. When Mom died, Sarah had just graduated from university. And if you had been with us at the graveside that day, you would have felt not just the warmth of the sun, but the warmth of Sarah's words as she spoke. I'm giving Grandma my graduation stole and cap because she has graduated from earth to heaven. She placed those on the casket, and we watched as they were lowered with the casket into the ground. And I did feel a wave of emotion, but it wasn't really sadness. It was joy. My daughter taught me a valuable lesson that dust collecting items can be used to give a lasting reminder of love and hope beyond the grave. And perhaps you are here tonight and you are feeling overwhelmed by that tsunami of information and wonder what on earth is worth remembering. Or maybe you are saying that long, slow goodbye to somebody in your life who's struggling with memory loss. Or maybe you're grieving their final passing. But on the canvas of each life, the dark strokes can serve to highlight the beautiful colors. And framed by time, as each of our lives is, the final picture is really good.